Eric, I got it to work. I left the meeting and came back, so now it's recording.
Okay, perfect. Great.
Well, it looks like a quorum is present. So,
And I did hear from Lauren and Jason that they will not be able to attend tonight.
I heard from Lauren.
Okay, yeah, Jason had emailed me earlier as well.
Are you ready for roll call, Chair?
Yes, let's.
Oh, okay. CJ?
Here.
Thank you. Matt?
Here.
Let's see, Helene?
Here.
All right, and then Chair Melinda is what I'm going to call you tonight.
Okay, here.
Thank you. Yes, so 5 members are present. You have a quorum.
I only count 4 members, but
4, 1, 2. Oh, so sorry. Yeah. Oh, but Cash isn't here, is he?
no.
Sorry. I accidentally marked him.
All right, so let's come to order. It's 6:33. And the first item is the approval of minutes for April 21st, which we already approved at the May 3rd meeting. So we can skip ahead, and there are no minutes of the May 3rd meeting. I checked.
If I may, really quick, are we able to proceed without a quorum?
No.
Oh, okay. Maybe we're going that direction. Pardon me.
Yeah.
Quick point of order. Do we have a quorum? What is the quorum requirements?
I think it's 4.
It's
It's
4.
4, so you do have a quorum.
Excuse me. I thought it was 5. Pardon me. Thank you.
No, you're fine.
Yeah, we had hopes. But
And just for clarification, because it was a workshop that you were doing and not a regular official meeting, that's why there were no minutes.
okay, yeah.
Okay?
Is the workshop able to approve those minutes? No, that was May 3rd. Never mind. I'm wrong.
You're okay.
So our old business is post-mortem on the presentation to City Council.
I don't think it was post-mortem. I thought it was good. I mean, there were certain things where it's like, oh, yes, you're right. You know, I liked the discussion.
Oh,
I thought it
You
went
use
very
later on
well.
still
I
angry,
thought there
so.
was a lot of I thought there was a lot of positivity from the council about it, and I think that the calls for clarification can be easily addressed.
I mean, I'm not sure what my opinion is worth. I'm as bad as anybody at deciding what those outcomes will be on city council, but I got the impression that it's on its way to approval, with a little bit of cleanup of language, but I don't think there were any really material changes that they wanted that were outside the intention of the group. So I thought it ended in pretty good shape.
I'll jump in too, and I think our original idea of writing out the legal language and then working with the city attorney and then presenting that as a whole to city council, I think that really worked in our favor with this.
I totally agree. Totally agree.
Yeah.
And the thing too of, doing the quasi, remember when we first suggested we were going to go straight to the city council anyway? Do you remember that? So we just tried, what the heck, let's just give it a go. But so when that didn't go through, I was like, shucky darn.
well, that's a kind of a matter of interpretation anyway, of whether it's quasi judicial is like, okay, then every time somebody wants to scrape a house, we'll send it to the city council for approval.
I think that's just the way we're going to have to edge our way in. I think I don't think anyone's going to give us a home run right off the bat.
Now, Helene, you had a couple interesting ideas about the quasi-judicial aspect of this.
Well, I felt like there might have been a little bit of misunderstanding about like around that topic in general. And so what I took from it was that any kind of decision, even if it's not a final decision, would make the commission quasi-judicial. But I think still that having the commission be in a position to be able to decline applications is beneficial to all parties involved, including community members. And my reason for thinking that is that the commission is not going to err on the side of disqualifying property with historical significance and an eager property owner. The commission would simply not err on the side of declining something that has historical significance. But we don't know the amount of applications we'll get. And I think that to have community members come to us first, have us recommend that they be dismissed, that it be declined, and then have to go to city council, repeat their efforts, and have city council undoubtedly agree with us, seems like a little bit of an extra effort for city council and for the community members. For us, it's the same amount of effort. And I think the concern was about final decision. So I think that an ideal situation would be the commission recommend for approval, the commission be allowed to decline or disagree with the historical designation and determine that, and then there be an appeals process so that city council retains final decisions, both approval and declining. And I think that that would be ideal, quasi-judicial aside, I just think that would be an ideal way to proceed for council and community members. For us, it's the same. We hear every case, we recommend for approval, but it just doesn't make sense if something's not historically significant. We don't think it's historically significant for us to then duplicate that appeal, that application process for city council and for the community member.
I didn't take it that was that way, that was that discussion. It was the discussion that someone's already a landlord. Now what? Right? So they want to plow, demolish their stuff. That's the way I understood it. It wasn't the idea that we declined someone that wanted landmark status. It was it was past that. So I thought.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, CJ, because I think there's two aspects to pushback that we received from city council, and one of which was not necessarily pushback, but more a matter of clarification that this has to be a voluntary effort, where possible. I think was the overall kind of consensus from those that spoke. But then there was also the question that the attorney had brought up, frustratingly being a different attorney than we worked with. It's kind of a collection right now of attorneys in Inglewood that are stepping in. But if I recall correctly, the attorney present, his comment was related to, can we be a quasi-judicial board? Should we be a quasi-judicial board? And brought up a number of things on that. And to Helene's point, that may not be part of the equation, but we need to look at what the mechanics of this look like. Can we deny, do we have the authority to deny properties as a commission and recommend the approval of properties? And of course, the denial, obviously that wouldn't take the time of city council, it wouldn't take the time of staff. If somebody with a house that was built in 2001, modern construction, comes in and says, hey, I want this historically designated, and we say, Yeah, no, I don't think this applies to the history of Inglewood. That would save the city time. Now, if somebody comes in and they want to designate their 1920s bungalow, we think it's a valid argument. We would then recommend the approval to city council, where city council would have the final decision for approval. Did I get that right, Helene?
Correct. And also, when denying the homeowner of the 2001 modern, they have the appeals option. But if we give them a reason for our denial, they may just accept that, and then it can end there. And I think it saves not only city council's effort and staff's effort, but also that community members' effort, because otherwise properties that would be denied are forced to a second tier if we're only allowed to recommend the denial. So that it's like an automatic second go around with city council after us, even if they're like most likely going to be denied. So I think it saves the community member as well. That's my point there.
CJ, does that?
Sorry, this is Nancy, and I apologize for interrupting, but for the record, I just need to note that Cash Parker has entered the meeting.
Yeah, I'm sorry I'm late. I was having a problem with my computer.
Welcome, Cash.
Thanks.
So CJ, does that make sense in response to?
Yeah, I mean,
what you're asking?
it seems like it would rarely, if ever, happen.
Right. I mean, there's very few scenarios I think where we'd ever, and yeah, I mean, to Lean's point, and there are very few scenarios where I think we want to actively deny somebody that has come to the commission. It could happen, but now, Councilmember Cuesta, what are your thoughts on that process?
Well, if I had to play devil's advocate here, and this isn't even really me speaking for council, but just maybe as other council members might see it, it sounds like, for instance, Mayor Pro Tem Sierra was thinking he would like that decision to be council's on the approval of such a thing. It would seem to me that in addition to the approval, denying it is a decision as well. I mean, there's two decisions to make there. It's approve or denied. And so I could see them saying that, they would accept the recommendation or the non-recommendation for any one of these applications, but it still goes before council. To me, it's really one of two ways it could go. I think the one that Helene just described, or the one that I just outlined. And frankly, sometimes if I had to wager, I can see council trying to take a bit more power whenever they can. And that is to describe them as a group that's always looking for more authority. But it kind of gives them a half decision. That would only come before them if it's a recommendation. But if it's a non-recommendation, it's essentially this commission saying no. And so that's where I could see maybe some more discussion, I guess, amongst council.
Well, I think it sounds fair. Here's the recommendation, here's the non-recommendation.
And then Cuesta, additionally, I think the final decision either way goes to council. So if the property owner of the 2001 modern wants to appeal that decision, it ultimately is council's decision, but it would potentially dissuade them from continuing further if the commission found their request to have no value.
Well, now my question is, we think there's going to be a cost for this. If you're denied, you lost your money too, right?
Typically, application fees are non-refundable, regardless of the outcome.
I mean, do we plan on having application fees? Because if we're trying to encourage community members to have their properties designated as historically significant, we've talked about potential incentives. We don't have a lot of control over the kinds of incentives we can offer community members, but I think a waived application fee is a really good place to start. I mean, if we want to start encouraging the community to participate in this, I don't see the benefit of having a fee attached.
There's been a fee attached all along, though, even in the original.
Yeah, the current version,
Before you came on.
the current version
Okay.
says a fee to be determined by a resolution of city council sufficient to cover the costs of processing the application.
Which is Eric's
Maybe
cost?
we can say that fee is 0 just to get the ball rolling, just to take that burden off of the community members who want to participate.
That could be a tough sell. I think, I'm trying to think back to the discussions we had because it was over a year ago. But Cash, maybe you can jump in here and help me how we came to that conclusion.
Yeah, and maybe Dave Cuesta can remember too, because I think you were part of those discussions. We talked about that extensively more than once, and I think the idea was that basically, if you create a process like this that's going to require the building planning department to process these applications, there has to be some fee associated with it to cover the cost. That's going to be the position of council on this. And so we went through different iterations of that language before landing on the version that's in what went to council for the study session. And I think that was the best we could come up with. But Councilmember Cuesta, correct me if I'm wrong, if I
think that is correct, that some sort of value has to be assigned to staff's time, not even necessarily councils nor the commissions, but to staff. To me, the key there is also just making it as nominal as possible. If it's a $50 application and you really want your house to get this, I would imagine you'll pay the $50, even risking that it might not go through. If it's, call it $500, you know, that might be a bit more, I don't know, worrying for some of the applicants. Even $250, I'm trying to do in my head, what's that magic number where, you know, it can satisfy staff's time and also not be dissuasive of somebody wanting to get their home considered.
Eric, do you remember the numbers itself, or can you find it real quick in the minutes?
I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but I do remember it being for a cost to cover staff time to review the applications.
Oh, I know, but do you or Nancy have the ability to look it up
Yeah.
real quick? Under search?
Sorry, I looked it up while you were discussing. The application fee is $500. That was set and approved by City Council. I don't know what year. So if the commission wanted to lower that fee or increase the fee, it would have to go back through as a resolution and council would need to approve.
Wow. I
$500.
never remembered $500.
I'm remembering 50.
And I remember there was a discussion around the cost for the plaque and rolling the cost of the plaque into the application fee. Of course, I think there probably needs to be more discussion on that anyway, because if it's denied, I mean, you're not paying for the plaque. So, you know, but wow, $500.
What year
A
was
lot.
that?
And I just checked, that was adopted in 2018.
That would dissuade me. I wouldn't do it.
I wouldn't do it either.
I just wouldn't do it. I would just be like, I can spend the $500 somewhere else. I mean, I think our objective is to want the community to engage in this way and to have their homes be given like historical status. And I just wonder if we can make it easier with fee-wise.
I'm just
Well,
stumped.
I agree that it's steep, but we can't, it's an ordinance that council passed. We can't do anything about it other than ask council to change it.
Maybe we can write in the changes we want in the new language, and maybe we can bundle it so that when they adopt this, they're also agreeing to like the new fee structure.
That's not a bad idea. And I can tell you, I think council would hear that number as well and realize it could be just prohibitive for a lot of folks that would be interested.
You know, encourage developers or somebody, you know what I mean? Business people.
Well,
If we lowered sorry.
I was going to ask Eric, I'm not sure how we reached $500. I mean, that's a nice round clean number. And there's no such thing, in my opinion, as nice round clean numbers when it comes to things like this. So it might be, Eric, do you recall how we reached that? Did we put just an estimate on staff time?
You know, I honestly don't remember. I think that was actually decided before I was the HPC liaison. So I don't recall exactly how the $500 got put into place.
Well, and all the discussions we had, I think the highest that we were at was right around 200. if I remember correctly.
Yes.
If,
that
if I
sounds-
may, I'm sorry, if I may, I believe it was a calculation of staff time, plus also surveying surrounding metro cities and what their fees were. Some were higher, some were lower, and that's what I recall.
I mean,
So that
the-
happened in administration.
Excuse me?
That happened by administration, the city administration.
Yes, so each department each year looks at their their fee schedules and then present to council to finance if they're wanting to increase or lower fees, and that's how council decides.
So, I guess my argument here is that $500 would potentially kill the interest of this flat out. And that's an easy way to summarize it.
I'm even thinking 250 seems high.
I think 250 is also high.
Yeah.
Is there a way, like, maybe one thing we could do is like, if the plaques are included in that calculation, let's take them out. Maybe reduce the fee for the first application and then increase it for an appeal. So if they're denied and they want to appeal, maybe there's like an additional appeal fee or something like that, and parse it out so that more applications come through of historically significant properties that we are motivated to protect. So like, again, it benefits like our mission to preserve the history of the city to have these applications come through. Maybe also we could keep the fee, like whatever it ends up being, but maybe we could also come up with a program, like a fee waiver program too, or some kind of incentive, or maybe an incentive for the first year after the language has been released, so that fees are waived for a year, and maybe we can push some promotion of the opportunity and try to get applications in.
I was just thinking that maybe a moratorium on fees on this for the first year to drive interest.
Oh my
That's
gosh,
a really good idea.
If you miss the cutoff, $500, right? My gosh.
I would still I'd reduce the fee and then do a moratorium on the reduced fee. Like our mission is to preserve the history of the city. So community members who come forward with applications are helping us on our mission. And so I think we should lift the burden on them as much as possible and incentivize it as much as possible.
Well, and what about breaking it up? Like the filing fee is $50. That's just to do the application. If you're approved and you'd like a plaque, then that's going to be $150. Something like that.
I love that. Yeah, I think that's great.
And if I may,
And an
too,
appeal.
well, just quickly, I believe the city has to put that value on staff time and just an associated cost there. I believe that the historical commission has X amount of dollars every year. We could make the plaque part of that. I mean, I don't think we're going to get a ton of applications to where, we can just, that's when I think we could donate if the commission felt it'd be one way to encourage more people.
Then I think we get our logo on those plaques for sure if we're donating them.
Yeah,
Which
the
logo,
commission,
huh?
the commission's logo that it.
If
Didn't the
that's the
commission
case, you
vote on
should
the
add
logo?
names too.
Yeah.
Big footprint.
I'm trying to think of where those plaques are. I've got one of those plaques around here. I don't know.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I mean,
our
it
logo
does
is at the
have our
center.
logo on it.
Yeah, our logo is actually the center of it. It's got the outline of the Alexandria Industries old city hall basically building, and then I think it says Inglewood Historic
Cool
Landmark. Yeah,
I believe, yeah.
Love it.
Well, and
So do we just try and write that in then, like something like what we just discussed, and try and write it in and then see if we can pass it with that overriding what the fees are currently? Is that how that works? Councilmember Cuesta, do you happen to know, like, if there's already a fee and we write in a different fee structure, would voting in this language override what's there? Or does that have to be like a separate?
It might have to come as two
effort.
different ordinances, but they could be taken back to back. You know, I think they would put the votes next to each other if it wasn't on a single ordinance. And again, I think council would see that here's this program, you know, let's say council's supportive of it. They're going to know $500 is a lot of money for most citizens, and that alone could be enough to just almost throw cold water on the whole thing. And so I would think the council would have a pretty practical approach. And I know that Ms. Fenton mentioned that we'd surveyed some surrounding communities. It's probably worthwhile to find a community that does it nearer to $50 that we could point to, than, you know, one that has it several $100s if we were looking for, call it comps of surrounding communities.
And then when it comes to calculating staff's time, if we as a commission are fielding the applications to make recommendations, what is staff doing exactly, just out of curiosity on their end? So if it's denied, nothing, right? We deny it, the city council denies it, staff has done nothing. If it's approved, does staff have to put it in the system or make a change? And then what do they do?
So most likely staff would be reviewing the initial application and actually writing a report or and a recommendation to HPC prior to the public hearing.
Staff reviews it for completeness and then hands it to us.
So if you block it out in kind of a workflow, the application's filled out, handed to somebody, and likely in the building department or city clerk's office or somewhere right around there. It then likely goes probably to community development. I think would be the right place for that, right, Eric? I mean, that's
Yep.
your department.
Yeah, it would come to us.
And then they would probably research the information on the property itself, check the application for completeness, verify that the property owner is actually the applicant, and probably do some research with the county on the date of construction and any kind of architectural information on the property. And then at that point, you take a recommendation, either yes or no, to the HPC. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that sounds pretty close. We have to make sure that the application matches, or what they're requesting matches what is established in the code to be considered historic. So there would be some sort of staff report involved.
So the city can deny an application, but only recommend to approve. Is that right then?
No, we can only deny an application if it's incomplete. Someone can submit an application, and if we compare it to what the code is requiring for a historic designated property, and if we find it doesn't meet those, then they would still get a public hearing before you guys, but our staff's recommendation would most likely be denial.
That kind of goes back to my original point, which is just that let's say you're a community member, you're the owner of the 2001 Modern, you go to the city, you pay the fee, they review it, they say no, we recommend no. They come to us, we recommend no, and they still have to go on to city council to hear a final no. I wonder if that, again, if we should be able to just decide no, and then it becomes an appeal at that point. Because we're gonna review it anyway, regardless. So should the journey of that application stop with us, barring any future appeal to that decision for denials?
Well, the way we've written it are that, for instance, a younger property could be considered significant. It could meet one of those criteria, and be less than 50 years old. But when the applicant is looking at the application for the first time, they see those 5, I believe it is, criteria and everything, and can argue, my property meets this one. Or if they realize their property doesn't meet any of those, then they don't apply. But I mean, that information is on the application, which I think we should have probably included the draft of the application with the materials that went to council. Because they obviously don't, let's say, didn't understand the difference between, for instance, applying for a designation and applying for a variance to make a change to an already designated property.
So, oh, sorry.
What was that?
Oh, I was just going to say something. I didn't want to interrupt. I'm sorry. Were you done? I'm sorry, Melinda?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. So I think, so actually, question for Eric. Is it possible to find out what neighboring communities charge for the historic designation application? So at least we can kind of get a baseline here, because I don't know if we were necessarily a part of that.
Somebody did that, right? For them to come up with this. That's what Nancy said.
But I'd like to see the work on that.
Okay, understand.
And just kind of see what the comparisons are. Do you think that's possible, Larry?
Yeah, I can have those numbers to you by the next HPC meeting.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and as I said, those fees were adopted in 2018, so that's when the survey was done. The other thing I would just interject, which is a question for the city attorney, and I believe Corey Hoffman Monday night addressed this somewhat, but something to consider, and Eric can certainly follow up with the city attorney, is if you're holding public hearings and it affects land, there's a good possibility that that public hearing, actually, I'm pretty sure on this, the public hearing will have to be posted in the paper, which there's a cost to that. And
Yeah.
there's a possibility that the property would have to be posted, which requires a sign. So just something to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for that.
So then I have a question about that. If like you're an applicant and the city has reviewed your application, they recommend it to be denied. It comes to HPC. We don't have to post that unless we have the authority to deny. First question, is that accurate?
No, the applicant has to. The city posts it in the paper and on the website, but the property owner has to post the sign. We send the wording and all of that. And I don't know if that part would be required. That's something to ask the city attorney.
And it was
I wonder if we'd be posting it and then city council also be posting it. As I just wonder if like it's gonna, because it seems like it's going through 3 tiers of review, not just for approval, but also for denial. And I'm just wondering where along that way does it have to be posted?
Well, so this would actually be specifically for a public hearing. If we call
Correct.
a public hearing, by the legal definition, it has to be public noticed. And to be public noticed, it has to be, oddly enough, in the newspaper. And then in certain criteria, to Nancy's point, there has to be a posting on the property, comparing it to how the Board of Adjustments and Appeals operates. So there would probably ever only be a single public hearing for a single application. I think the question is, does that public hearing happen under our authority, or does that happen under the authority of City Council?
Yeah, I have that question.
Since the HPC is going to be the board actually making the recommendation to council, I think it would make sense to have, at that point, have the public hearing when it comes before you guys.
I agree entirely, but now, question for Nancy. Corey's statement, it was Corey, right? The city attorney?
Yeah.
The acting city attorney. Corey's opinion was that if we have the authority to hold a public hearing, then that inherently makes us quasi-judicial.
Correct. So it would be, Board of Adjustment is the final authority. So if we take Planning Commission recommends to City Council. So if there is a public hearing before Planning Commission, it is posted in the paper for the Planning Commission hearing. then it goes to city council. And this is where Corey would be helpful. Is it another public, so with planning commission, it's another public hearing before city council, and it has to be published again. But it would just depend on how city council, if they wanted to call it a public hearing or how they're going to do that. So I think that's a question for the city attorney.
Mhm.
And then, yes, as far as you transferring or transitioning to a quasi-judicial commission, that's another question for the city attorney. I believe your enabling ordinance might have to be changed, the commission's enabling ordinance, to give you that authority. But again, these are all good legal questions that should
Sure.
be asked.
One more question real fast. Is
Sure.
planning and zoning a quasi-judicial board?
Planning and zoning acts in a quasi-judicial manner when they are hearing land use cases in public hearings. If they're just hearing a change to Title 16, they are not acting as a quasi-judicial manner. It's only in those public, when they're acting in a public hearing and they are making those recommendations. Even though they
Okay.
make recommendations anyway, it's more when it's dealing with land is when they are in the quasi-judicial manner. And Cash is an attorney, so he may know some of these answers.
Yeah, and it's not, this is not, municipal law is not the area of law in which I practice. So I'm by no means an expert, and I'm obviously not providing legal advice. But and Jason would know the answer to this question because he had the discussions with the folks who are the acting city attorneys. But as these amendments are currently drafted, we originally had put in there a hearing, a public hearing before the commission. That was stricken out, and it's drafted to have the hearing just in front of council. I think to eliminate some of these difficulties Nancy is referring to with would our enabling ordinance have to be changed? What would we have to do in terms of notice requirements and all that? I think that's why it ended up being drafted this way, to put the public hearing just in front of council. I'm not saying that's the right or wrong way to do it, but I think those issues are why it is set up the way it is in this draft.
Okay.
I just looked at our enabling ordinance and we are established as an advisory committee.
Well, what's interesting about this is, so we are very close to what planning and zoning does in this capacity, and really actually you could boil it down. We are an advisory commission and planning and zoning is an advisory commission, but planning and zoning has a quasi-judicial ability when dealing with land issues. You know, I think there'd be a pretty good argument there for us to be a similar makeup, whereas like, and the Board of Adjustments and Appeals is just a quasi-judicial board. That's all they do. But planning and zoning is a partial one. They are only quasi-judicial when they're dealing with land issues. There might be an argument for us to have a similar layout as planning and zoning.
I mean, I agree with Matt. I feel like if we want to like really have an impact on preserving the history in our community and be able to be more efficient in our missions, I think it would be helpful for us to be able to have those hearings. Ultimately, the decision is still city council's. I still think we should be able to deny with the applicant having the right to appeal to city council. But I think approval should have to go to city council. But I do agree with Matt on that.
Well, to Matt's point, you're right. I mean, it's accepting a designation and recommending approval is in essence a zoning decision, more or less, right? It's just a particular kind of zoning decision that is not in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission. It's in front of this commission. So I mean, I agree with you. I think there's perhaps a valid reason to structure it that way. And I would imagine, I haven't looked into it, I would imagine that's how other cities are doing it. Or I know in some cities, sometimes this decision is considered a pure zoning decision. And it goes in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Well, we're not looking, for instance, to do historic overlays or approve those sort of things. That's definitely planning and zoning. But I mean, this does seem like, can't we add 3 or 4 more layers of bureaucracy to this to make sure it's a real deterrent to people, you know, that.
Well, Melinda, I think that's actually, that hits it right on the head right there. That is the point, I guess, of discussing this right now is how do we make this, be careful, I guess, saying this because government isn't efficient, but how do we make this as efficient as possible?
Yeah.
So, and it's less painful. I mean, if the poor person taking the application has to go through 10 different steps and 4 different committees, that's a lot of time and frustration. And yeah.
Yeah.
So where do we go with this?
I was going to bring up the idea too, that since we've got that study session in the horizon, is to bring up the application and say, and could we discuss the fee? Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, and to kind of summarize everything, to bring this back around from the city council meeting, I guess there's 3 different topics here that need to be corrected or looked at, more or less. One of which being clarification that the process is voluntary for historic designation of individual properties, excluding districts. 2, are we quasi-judicial or not? Maybe not that particular word, but do we have the ability to hold a public hearing? And 3, the fee structure. So those 3 things are the key points that we need to hit on for the next presentation to council. Is that a good summary?
Yes.
That
Thank
sounds
you.
right to me. Is it a good strategy to go back to the language, write things in the way that we see as optimum as a group and re-present it, and know, instead of presenting questions, right, we're going to present solutions. I'm assuming we're going to solve those questions amongst ourselves first and then present that.
And have it shot down again. Yes. I wish Jason was able to be here tonight because he's what plugged in most of that language.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think if we got shot down again, it would be very specific as to what and why, and it would be an easy rewrite to have it go again. But I think the 3 sticking points that Matt laid out for us are ones that we should fashion as we see fit, I think, one more time before adapting to whatever the feedback is.
I would actually recommend that as well. I think the closest that the group can get to a finished product, that, you know, if the changes are more kind of on a principled component of it, that just change this would be the easiest, as opposed to, I mean, frankly, I thought you guys walked out of there with pretty good guidance as it was. I don't think you walked out of there with a long to-do list of things that council was looking to change. But I think there's been some more depth here as well, as you guys have walked through it, and maybe a bit more detail to some of the things. But I think that the less council has to work on it, the better in terms of getting it through.
Yeah, for many reasons, for many reasons, less council. So
I think there's a 4th item on the list too, which Melinda brought up, which is the application. Maybe we should mock up a draft of a potential application too by the time we resubmit it to council. Is that reasonable, or is that like a crazy ask? Is that
we already have a
advantageous to do?
draft application.
Oh, did we just not
Yeah.
submit it?
Right.
No,
And I
it was
think
just for
that's
like
not-
it was just like a test application, and I think it was for the either the David Brown house or the Scared house. I can't remember which one.
It was a David Brown
Is the
house.
Brown, yeah.
Brown House. Yeah, we can include that along with it. Brown House in the bank, yeah. We can include that along with it.
Maybe
That's
take a
good.
look at it. Maybe take another look at it and then, yeah, include it. What is our timeline for resubmitting and for the next study session?
I did not get an impression on that, but I can check in. And you know, I will tell you guys that there's a pretty big gap in meetings coming up. Council only does meetings 4 times a month, so we've got a 5th Monday in May. Then we've got the following week off with Memorial Day. They didn't schedule something for the Tuesday because we have Monday off. So there's a bit of a gap. I guess what I'm going is it could be in June. If we were going to have it, I would imagine the soonest one would be the 2nd, or I guess the 3rd Tuesday in June, the 2nd study session of the month.
I think we should probably wait because Jason's not here, and I think we probably really need him to be the cornerstone of this.
Yeah.
I think
I
there's
would also
that
recommend
right?
having another discussion with the attorney as well when
Yeah.
you some revised language.
I think there's a.
Can we
there's
try
a-
to schedule a July? Sorry, Matt.
No, go ahead.
Certainly. I can certainly chat with the mayor and mayor pro tem.
I mean, there's a, what I was going to say is there's a distinct benefit to doing this quickly and getting back in front of council quickly so that they remember the conversation, they remember, and they don't go, oh, hey, well, what about this as some new topic that, you know, came up because it's the whole thing settled down. Though I think June is too soon. To Eric's point, we have to go back through the attorney. We need to get Jason and Lauren, you know, to voice their opinions on this. So maybe we set something up for our next meeting to workshop some of these adjustments and then be potentially ready by July. Does that sound about right, Melinda?
Yeah. That's, of course, assuming we're all reappointed, or 4 of us are reappointed to the commission in July.
That's true.
I would
Everybody
just let
put
you
the-
know,
Mhm.
sorry, I would just let you know that the new city attorney will be coming on board. Councilmember Questa, correct me if I'm wrong, but the 1st of June, so she would be
Oh,
here
great.
by the time.
Wonderful.
But
I was
she
just
would
going to
be
say that.
she would be on board by your next meeting.
Thank you,
Well,
Nancy. I think that's correct.
We can always use that to our benefit and say 4 different attorneys have reviewed this and have agreed with us.
A team of attorneys.
Yeah.
So
Okay, well, we've probably beaten that subject to death now, so let's move on to our neighborhood mapping. And is there any, have y'all been too busy to working on other things to
well, we have been very busy, but to give you an update on it, we're in progress. We've had a couple evenings that we've been able to talk about it over the phone and kind of work on it remotely. We made some really good progress on one of those discussions, some good notes. We need some more time. This is a pretty big project, but Helene, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, one thing we discussed the last time we met was working on another draft with some of the feedback that we got from the city. After producing that first draft, having the commission vote on that draft, and then submitting that to the city council members, not in an official way, but as a draft through email. So I don't know if there's any procedural issues with that, but I think we'd like to get the city council members' input earlier than later, have them give us some feedback and then apply their feedback, and then have our study session with city council after we've already applied some early feedback. That'll give the council members also an opportunity to reach out to maybe community members whose input they value and get some of that up front, mostly so that we're not getting too detailed and then having to redo and redo again. So yeah, that's where we're at now. We think that in the next, by the next meeting, we might be able to have a draft. I mean, that's our goal, is to have a draft for the commission to vote by the next meeting. If the commission agrees, then send it out to city council through email asking for feedback, giving a deadline on that, and then applying that feedback and then setting up the study session.
And I think the benefit too, just to jump in here, the benefit of talking to council about this is kind of an iterative thing, if we can, if that's an option. It was the point that Mayor Olson came up with. Make sure, you know, somebody needs to make sure that Hampton Hills is
that was
in there.
definitely obvious.
And that kind of came out of left field there, because there's a lot of neighborhoods in that area that we you know, without that feedback, we might not have picked Hampton Hills. So so that's good information.
We're going to get a lot of feedback. This project is potentially going to bring like a firestorm of feedback from the community and council members and everybody involved. And so I think to try and prepare for that and absorb some of that incrementally, if we can send a draft and not present anything as even remotely close to final in the beginning, absorb that feedback, and then we'll be presenting something that already has more collaboration in it. I think that'll help everyone involved, community members too, because if what would be their feedback is already incorporated, then they don't have to be part of the firestorm. Yeah.
I was thinking Chamber of Commerce too would probably have some input.
Chamber in Inglewood?
Or the Downtown Development Authority?
Yeah.
I think community members, when community members see the draft that we present, they're going to be the ones with the feedback, like just people living in their homes all over the city. Because when the city rolled out the map a little early, there was a lot of feedback coming just from that. And I don't know that it was even really rolled out like with as big of an impact as it could potentially have. So I think as community members see the map, they're going to react to it. They're going to say, that's not how I see it, or that's exact, or, you know, that's right, or this is wrong, or whatever. I think everybody in the city, I think a large percentage of the city is going to have an opinion about the map. How many of those citizen members reach out or advocate or whatever, I have no idea. But I think city council members are a resource for us at this stage to get their feedback early, and maybe some of that will be on behalf of their community members. And that way we can sort of absorb some of that now and then produce a draft for a next layer of review after. Just a way to incrementalize it a little bit. And also by releasing something that we can officially call a draft versus releasing something that we would say, this is what we're presenting. I'd rather get input on a draft than present something as like even close to being final, because we really need that feedback. Like we can't really move forward without more feedback. That's what
Madeline got with hers, you know, when they put theirs out. Definitely got feedback.
Well, we have that feedback, right? So if there's more to that feedback, we're welcome to take it. But I think we need more feedback. I think we need feedback from city council members. And I think city council members will know who in their community might be great resources to get feedback from early too. So yeah.
I'd be careful with it's actually a really good idea, CJ, with the chamber, but I'd be careful with bringing this to them right now, because there's both the chamber and the Downtown Development Authority. Well, the Downtown Development Authority, I guess, hasn't really said anything specifically, but the chamber has actually commented in an interesting way about the preservation of the Broadway Southwest building, the city center right now. And So anyway, I don't know. We can ask, but I wouldn't expect tremendous amount of input based upon their response to the saving of the city hall.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or any other historic thing on South Broadway, for instance. Yeah. It's
I think you're reading between the lines there, Melinda, that a very interesting response from the chamber on a number of things.
yeah.
Our plan was always to get community feedback. We just originally thought it would happen once we've presented something to city council. I just think that it should happen right before. And I think city council should be part of that feedback before anything's like officially presented. So can we email a draft to city council members, get their feedback? Is there anything procedurally wrong with that, Nancy?
Sorry, trying to find my mute button again. Not that I'm aware of.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions or thoughts about that strategy?
No, if we can get their attention ahead of time, it's all well and good.
Yeah. And Dave, for instance, just kind of prototype this real fast. If you were to receive that information ahead of time, would you know who to talk to in your area? Would you be able to put it out as a emailing or something along those lines?
Sure, and it might not hurt to have work with staff on it as well. To have it come through Sean's office, to have Sean, take a look as well, because I think he might be able to. He can put it into the hands of council. I think a little bit more directly if it comes. From HPC. And then needs to say, I think that would be with as it's presented. And if he wanted to, I'm not sure if it's too early in the conversation to have him, hand back any edits he might see prior to it going to council. But I can see council taking a look at our thoughts, but eventually asking for feedback from staff as well. So I guess I wonder when do we want to, cross each one of those bridges? We could give it our own shot. HPC could go, give it the first draft to council, but I can see staff getting pulled in at some point.
Okay.
Yeah, I would think anything that would go to council should come through me as the staff liaison to HPC. I think that's what we've done in the past.
And that's probably, I'm sure that's the right way to do it. So I agree.
Correct. Terrific point, Eric.
Yeah, let's do that.
Thanks, Eric.
Perfect. So next meeting, Matt and I should have a draft for the commission to review. Pending how that goes, we would then give it to Eric to give to city council with some instruction. The instruction would be something along the lines of, give us your input, but also include some community members that you think will have valuable input. It's not really a stage at which we want to open it up to everybody because we're trying to incrementalize it. And so once we get back city council's feedback and some of their, some of the feedback from the constituents that they have reached out to, then we will absorb that feedback, apply it, run it back through the commission, and then present it at a study session to city council. And at that point, I think it could be like opened up to the community at large and just like really pushed at that level to get more feedback, then decide what in that feedback gets applied, and then hopefully have a finished draft at that point. Not complicated or drawn out at all.
Okay. We'll expect that next.
Does that sound right, Matt?
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Onward. Since Lauren's not here tonight and probably won't be here with us next month either because she'll have a newborn, or she'll really want to have a newborn by that time. But The Scarrett House thing is probably just needs to be tabled until such time as we have an approved application and some approved process before we can go forward with it. What does everyone think?
Yeah, we don't have the process. Right?
Yeah.
Can't move forward right now without city council saying, yes, you may.
Yeah. Well, and they haven't even seen our form. So we'll just table that for the time being.
You know, again, I still think we should submit the application. The Scarrett House would be a great example. You know, and this is what we're looking at. This is how we
Yeah,
go.
and this is an example of we're thinking we should designate it, that it should be designated, and we do have we've spoken to the property owner and they are okay with that. If
I mean,
we
to
went
tell
to
you,
them and
they
said,
were like,
you want to give us $500 for this, they'd probably decline. But
I don't know, they were really, here you go, just, yeah, you can do whatever you want, sure, go ahead. You know, and that was one thing too, when I was looking at the reconstruction that's gonna go around there with the streets and the bridges and stuff. I was like, oh my God, it's gonna be almost butting up to the Scarrett House. Maybe I'm wrong, but
yeah,
Wait, what's going
I
on?
mean, we would like to have a protective bubble around that house, but
have you seen the idea of what they're gonna do with that bridge in Hamden and all that?
No, I haven't.
David, do you know what I'm talking about?
I'll beg your pardon. I'm not sure either. It's a pedestrian bridge in Hampton.
No, they're going to redo that bridge and that whole supposed intersection. There was a map. I don't know if it was something, obviously not through the city of Inglewood.
No, yes, ma'am. Thank you. I know what you're referring to now. And fortunately, we got some sort of grant money, and I believe it was from either CDOT or even federal. And so that's coming up pretty quickly. You know, the city had to match, but it's probably a project that would not have gotten underway if it weren't for that grant money. And I think that that's one of our highest prioritized infrastructure projects that we've got right now. Eric,
The
can you
idea is, will we lose any houses in that area?
I don't believe so. No, there was to be no impact to residential because a big component of this was not having to get into eminent domain or buying properties or anything of that nature.
Oh, good to know. Thank you.
There's a story about the pigeons that live under the bridge there at Hampton being a really serious problem and has been apparently a health issue or safety issue in the past. So I wonder if that's what I wonder if that'll be fixed in this process. That's, you know what I'm talking about, Dave?
I can't speak to the residency of the pigeons, Matt, but there's probably going to be some disruption to their housing.
Yeah, I would hope there is. That's an issue. Actually, that goes back probably 10 or 15 years. That's been a serious issue with that bridge.
raised by somebody whose car got pooped on as they drove by, right?
No, I actually one of the times going under that bridge, it was funny. I actually hit a pigeon in my truck, and come to find out that that's not a abnormal occurrence under driving underneath the Broadway.
With the historical designation of the house, I'm wondering if once the new language does get voted in after we revise it once or twice more, maybe the house can be the first historical designation under that new language for the commission, and maybe we could have a little ceremony with the plaque and maybe push it promotionally a little bit, raise some awareness about the history of the area, and maybe get a little write-up in some local papers or something. Maybe we can make a whole thing out of it.
Yeah. And the Spirit House is incredibly important to Inglewood. So that would be, I mean, there's obviously key properties, and that being one of the main ones.
It's so teeny. It's so teeny.
It would be like a good inaugural, like, historic designation for the commission. And then it could raise awareness of the house, but also of the new application process for historical designation.
Well,
So
then
it
we
could
get
like do it, be a twofer.
We could get support from History Colorado, from, Denver Inc., who's part of that, who was part of purchasing that house for its rehabilitation. So, yeah, we could make it a big.
Maybe have
statement.
like a plaque hanging ceremony or something.
Well, and it can go on to be designated as a state historic landmark. And one of the questions in the application for that is it a local landmark? Has the city designated it? And that adds some punch to the application for a state designation.
Mm-hmm. It's all layers, I guess. State, city, and then History Colorado also. Their involvement in these processes just adds a further layers of protection and recognition for the properties.
Yeah.
And then just a reminder that, so once council approves your language, you're still going to need to wait for the Title 16 rewrite to be completed before you can start accepting those landmark applications. I just don't want you guys to put the cart before the horse. So just FYI.
Yeah, well, we could, I was thinking about not wanting to delay the historical designation, but maybe we could just make it like honorary on the flip side. So like get the designation as soon as possible, but once we're, our language has been adopted and that's all up and running, then maybe like revisit the house and have like an honorary ceremony with the plaque and all of that to raise awareness of the new historic designation application process. So kind of like use that as like a noteworthy example of like what the program we're working on does, even if it's just symbolic.
Well, and the code update, though the official code update is probably not going to be completed for a year. So that's like, okay, what are we going to be doing with ourselves in the meantime? But at least the committee that's the advisory committee or whatever is planning to meet every other Tuesday for a year. Oh, and by the way, I applied but was not accepted. So.
Oh, you did apply for the?
I did, yes.
Oh.
For what it's worth, you had
yeah.
my vote, Melinda, and I think I can't recall the final votes. I think you were one off on making it, but you had my support. I want this commission to know.
Doug received it though, didn't he? I believe Doug did.
No, I don't. I'm not sure. Wait.
I'm not sure if Mr. Cohn made it either, and I supported him as well. I'm not sure if he made that final cut. I can actually check that real quick.
Yeah.
I was under the question.
I saw the list, but that
I
do know
well, I liked knowing that you were going to be like thinking that you were going to be part of that process, because I thought in my head that you'd be advocating for like our mission here too. So I'm very disappointed to hear that.
Yeah, I didn't see any voices for historic preservation in the final list.
That's discouraging.
But I do know one of the people who was appointed, and so I can lobby her. And I will.
It's a loss that you won't be sitting on that. So
yeah.
Well, we had to try. CJ, what are you doing there?
I'm just saying, can we move on?
Yes, let's do. I read, in preparing for that, I read the entire assessment report that you may remember, all of the surveys and various online meetings and opinion polls and so forth. And this condensed everything down. And I was agreeably surprised to see that when they got to historic preservation, they recommended a lot of the stuff that we've already done. So, and they refer also to the city of Golden. And Cash, do you recall that Golden was one of the ones we looked at when we were researching, weren't we?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was. I don't remember for sure, but I think so.
Yes, yeah, it was. Golden was one of the cities we looked at from the demolition permit standpoint, and I think also from the historic designation process. So demolition permit and historic designation process, I believe they were looked at.
Yeah,
I believe. So Melinda, who wrote this?
the whole
UDC assessment?
yeah. And it's
Was this done by the city, or who exactly wrote this?
no, it is I'll tell you, it's let's say it's the supplemental yeah, complete assessment with supplement, and of course it only came out March 21st.
Mhm.
And it's a huge, so it's the city, and it's
It was actually Logan Simpson is the firm that is the one the consultant that was working on that. So they actually wrote it based on the public input and the park meetings and all of that.
This is really, really amazing and positive that literally everything that we have focused on as a commission is, I mean, there's a couple of we've done more, but the 3 bullet points they have at the bottom,
yeah.
I mean, that it provide regulations for demolition of historic properties. I mean, you can expand that into actually provide regulations for demolition of properties in England, but this is fantastic.
Yeah, it was like, all right. And so I included then I went and looked up the adaptive reuse section, and it's like, yeah, we didn't think of that. That might be something we want to incorporate. And of course, the other question is, whether historic preservation should be as part of the UDC or a separate section all by itself.
Well, should we consider putting this as 0.5 for the 16.611 discussion that we're going to have next month, as make sure that adaptive reuse is included in that? Because this hasn't been passed yet, I don't believe so. Well, it's got a chapter, 16.5.3.
And so, I mean, I think we want to look at, this is the entire thing. And of course, there is none of that actually exists. Or right, the reuse of the building shall be limited to such use approved by the commission and council.
Eric, is this 16.5.3, is that actually in the Unified Development Code right now under Title 16?
I'm looking at for that right now. I don't remember off the top of my head, but give me a minute and I'm kind of flipping through here. I'll get back to you.
Okay.
This change was passed by initiative ballot question 2D on November 1st, 2011.
No. That 2D, I know 2D very well. 2D was the property rights initiative that was passed by citizen-led initiative. That doesn't have any relation to the adaptive reuse. I'm not sure. I think that this 2D must have affected this in some way. And that's why that note was at the bottom there. But 2D was the parking and property rights initiative. Do you recall that, Melinda?
Vaguely.
Yeah.
It was 10 years ago.
That was 10 years ago. And full disclosure, I was part of the group that wrote that. So.
That's
Okay,
why you
so-
know it well.
I'm looking at the code now, and there is a section just on very basic adaptive reuse. The approval of reuse of historic buildings, et cetera, shall be subject to a list of conditions. There's A through E. And then there's an editor's note at the bottom of this section of the code that says this change was passed by initiative ballot question 2D on November 1st, 2011, and can only be revised, repealed, or amended by electoral vote.
No, and we were just talking about that, Eric. 2D,
Okay, sorry.
2D related to private property, use of private property, but all related to parking and vehicle use on private property. I don't know how that would affect this unless there was something in 2D. So when 2D passed, there was about, I think there were 70, don't quote me on this, but I think there were 77 pages of the Englewood Municipal Code that were changed. So it did affect a lot of things in the code. So there might have been something in here that was removed because of 2D or amended because of 2D. But 2D itself, the wording has literally nothing to do with adaptive reuse.
Okay.
I can actually send you the original wording if you.
Sure. Actually, that'd be great if you have it handy.
Let me take a peek here real fast and see if I can find it.
Well, and note this is adaptive reuse of designated historical buildings, which we don't have any yet at least that are designated as Englewood historical buildings. And are unlikely to have any for quite a while, so. But are you looking that up?
Yeah, it may take me a little bit, but 10 years ago, that was.
Oh yeah, I wasn't thinking about tonight, just so I could like check it out and just review it before our next meeting.
Yeah, I'll get it to you.
Okay.
Eric.
Thank you.
I thought maybe I could just find it real quick, but it's gonna take me a little bit digging.
Well, and I think it must be in the current code somewhere because, like I say, this assessment recommended incorporating it into the historic preservation section. So it's there somewhere. Or the language from it where we'd be incorporating, but I thought that was a real eye opener.
What's next, Melinda? What's next?
Next is just staff's choice.
Yeah, so just a quick update on the historic survey grant. We are finalizing contract language between Pinion Environmental and the city. Again, Pinion is going to be the one who's going to be performing the historic survey. So that is moving along and should have pretty good update for you at the June meeting.
Real quick, is there anything in there involving us with them at any step of the way?
Yes, so there's actually going to be an initial kickoff meeting between staff, one or two members of the HPC, and Opinion Environmental, as well as the grant coordinator from the State Historic Office. So basically, there will be kind of a liaison from the HPC that will be working with this project, which I hope to have a little bit more info about next time for you guys. But then at that point, I'm assuming that Opinion will come and come to one of these meetings. I know there's going to be a couple public events around the survey, so I do expect that there will be more HPC involvement in the near future.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would hope they're reporting to us. Yeah. Then Commissioner's choice.
Go, Matt, go.
Hi. Yeah, I don't really have anything to update tonight.
What? You're speaking on Tesla.
Oh yeah, well
Hello?
thank you. Thank you for the reminder. Yes, I'm speaking on Tesla again, Monday, May 24th. We have had an amazing response to it. We basically, so it's obviously a free event, but because of COVID restrictions and social distancing and things like that, people had to RSVP for it. We filled up all the RSVP spots in 3 days.
And this is from the Inglewood Historic Preservation Society.
The Inglewood Historic Preservation Society.
They're starting their monthly lectures.
We're restarting them. Yep, we've not done one since January of, God, has it been 2019?
No, 2020.
2020, yeah. January of 2020 was the last one we did. So it's been a while since we've done them, but we're starting them up again. And our new venue is the Service Station Tap House over on Acoma. And we're
Filling
excited about
Station,
that.
I think is its name.
Service Station?
I think it's called Filling Station.
Filling Station Tap House. Thank you. Well, I appreciate that, CJ. What I do without you. Yeah, what I do without you. Anyway, yeah. So, but Melinda, were you going to be coming?
I didn't RSVP in time, but
Okay.
I did, of course, see your previous one. So, and I'm still, the Mile High Con is going in real life this October, and so I'm still going to try to get you to do that presentation for all of the science geeks. That
I'd love to. I would love to. So.
And be sure to drive there in your Tesla too, because that or your DeLorean. I mean,
well, I have a Tesla also, so so yeah, so that either one I guess would be appropriate in that case, right?
yeah.
Will these be recorded?
What's that?
Will these be recorded?
We're gonna try. We're gonna try to do that. We've been trying to do that for a while. There's a lot of resources in recording these and getting them posted, but we're gonna give that a try this year, and hopefully this one will work the first time for this.
Cool. And you're going to
I
fire
have
up.
something I want to add to our, I'm sorry.
Hmm?
No, I was changing the subject, so
Yeah.
I'll wait.
Or no, it's just commissioner's thing. So if you've got something.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to add something to our list for next meeting. We have 4 things now. I think the other thing we might want to look at too is any language around us providing the plaques, or like a grant, the commission offering a grant for the plaques, or whatever we're calling it. We didn't put that on our to-do list, and I think that probably has to be like figured out too, as a 5th item on the list.
Okay.
not as exciting as Tesla coils, I'll tell you what.
Commissioner
I didn't
share,
RSVP. So I didn't RSVP soon enough either, but I'm hoping I can get a scout ticket or something, maybe know somebody who might be able to get me into the talk on Monday, Matt.
We're trying to get more space actually, so that we can accommodate more people there. We'll talk here and see if I can see if we can squeeze you in. And Melinda, for that matter too, if you want to come, I think we could probably squeeze you in too.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I do
Commissioner
love
Story,
watching a Tesla
DJ?
glow.
But that's all I have, and yeah, so.
So
All right,
CJ
anyone
is going
else?
to announce Arapahoe Acres is having a garage sale throughout the neighborhood. We don't know if it's been ever done before, so it's definitely not historic. On June 12th, with Saucy Noodle they're going through the application process as a food truck vendor, 11 to 2. And the garage sales throughout the neighborhood, right now there's like 13 of us, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Saturday, June 12th.
June 12th. Okay. A great opportunity to tour around Arapahoe Acres too. All right. Thank you all for showing up tonight. We're not held to absolutely have to go till 8:30. So if somebody wants to move, we adjourn.
So moved.
I second.
All right. And all in favor can say bye.
Bye.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Yeah.